Someone responded to your comments in the newspaper as saying that you were concerned about Israeli greed for Arab land, and how can that be the case when Israel gave up the vast Sinai with its oil wells and military bases and towns to Egypt for a peace treaty, withdrew from the Gaza Strip and left the infrastructure and greenhouses intact for Palestinians, and withdrew from southern Lebanon to internationally recognized borders?
Well, let me take it serial. In the case of the largest piece of territory was the Sinai. It was a very big piece of land, and the Israelis had begun to colonize there too. I think they were biting off more than they could chew. In that case, it was just too large an area, but they had moved some 20,000 people into the Sinai, and I think they just saw with Sadat, they saw that Sadat was a man with whom they could work. And Jimmy Carter was a man with whom they could work. And I think they saw advantages to themselves in securing, having a peace treaty with Egypt, which is what they obtained by giving up the Sinai. There have been no further problems between Egypt and Israel of a military nature since 1978, when that agreement was signed. And I think that it was a very good treaty. It did a good deal for both sides, both the Egyptians and the Israelis, and I think that they were glad to do that for that reason. In the case of Lebanon, the Israelis had simply invaded Lebanon, taken over about 6 miles of territory beyond their border, and you can argue not a bad justification for that, in my opinion, because they were subjected to cross-border incursions and problems from Lebanon. Lebanon was a very anachronistic, it's always been a very hard country to rule. There are Sunnis, Shias, Christians, a terrible political mix in Lebanon. It's a very, very, very difficult country. And the Israelis were afraid, and so they went over and occupied. And then they decided that there was a lot of international pressure upon them about this, and they decided that their interests were better served, and also there was internal difficulties. There were parents of Israeli soldiers who were demonstrating against the occupation of Lebanon, saying, look, we don't want our sons over there in Lebanon. They risk being killed in somebody else's country. We want them back here. And so in the end, the pressures grew up enough, or built up enough that they withdrew those 6 miles or so and back into Israel. And I think that was a rather specialized circumstance of speaking of the upland. Now, the question of Gaza is a very interesting one, and that is Sharon felt that Gaza, there were only about, I think I've forgotten, 15,000, 18,000 at most Jewish settlers in Gaza. It's not a very attractive place to live. I've been there several times. It's a sand trap, and it's awful, terribly overpopulated. One of the most, imagine 1.5 million people in an area which is not much bigger than the District of Columbia. And with not urbanized in the same way. It's a very crowded and difficult spot. Anyway, there is no biblical relationship between Israel, the Jewish people, and Gaza. The biblical relations are all with Judea and Samaria, which are the West Bank. So there was the whole religious movement for occupying the West Bank did not exist in the case of Gaza, and it was easier to withdraw. It also, since there was so limited number of settlers, it was possible to do it, since the great majority of Israelis wanted to do it. It was possible to do it without risking the kind of reaction you would have if you tried to bring back 500,000 people from the West Bank and East Jerusalem. So anyway, those are some of the reasons of the differences. And I don't think that argument is a very good one, that they've given up land, therefore why do you say they must give up more land? I don't really I think that's a very, very persuasive case.